So after two years of auditioning, you end up making it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the difference was?
I recorded myself my third year out for almost every single day for 2 weeks straight, 3 weeks straight. I think that was also the year that I had bought a drum. So my Homestead, they sold, it might have been before that, but that was one of the years I actually started to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought my old high school's old drums. They're old Pearls. They might have been SCVs at one point. And I was just drumming in my garage. And I made it a point to run through the entire lot, the entire exercise sequence, or I guess audition packet, every day for 2 or 3 weeks straight. And I recorded myself the second rep of every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why do my paradiddles sound like that? So I was like, oh, maybe I'll just make this adjustment. So that was maybe the first time that I was starting to engage with, coaching myself in a sense, you know?
Was it surprising to you? Because I feel like that's something, I talk to, young people who are auditioning also a lot about, is that what you think you're doing versus what makes it out here, what it sounds like and what it looks like is different.
Mm-hmm.
So having that outside perspective, whether it be another person or whether it be a recording of you, is really important, so that you know how to create what you want to out here. You can sort of match up those feelings. Was it a shock? Was it very different? You were like, whoa.
Yeah, it was different. It was very different. I mean, up until that point, I had recorded myself, but never that seriously.
Right.
I was recording licks and just kind of stuff, just random stuff. But I was like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously.
Yeah.
I had a Met going in the background and everything, and I just wanted to. My third year out, I was like, man, I'm tired of getting cut. I want this to happen. I'm out of high school. There's nothing stopping me from making it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just asked myself, what is the most amount of work I can put in the smartest way possible that I knew at the time, in order for me to make my chances of making it as high as I can, you know?
Yeah.
You know the movie Rudy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's like one of my favorites.
Exactly.
I could jump in anywhere. Yeah.
It's like, did you do everything that you could? You know, and I asked myself that after 15 and 16. 15, I was a kid, but especially after the second year I got cut, it was reflecting a lot more. I was older. I had a season of drum corps under my belt, so I felt like I stood a higher chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked myself, like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What could I do more of? And then the next year, for the 2017 season, I just worked my butt off. I was drumming every single day for a long time, and just recording myself helped a lot. That was a big tool for me. But I didn't have a lot of confidence playing by myself still. But I was fortunate enough to get a call back, and the entire callback camp, I just felt like I just didn't sound as good as maybe other people thought I did. Like,
okay.
I was in a higher standing than I thought. But yeah, confidence was always something I struggled with as an individual player.
Were you surprised you made it?
After callbacks, after the whole camp, I wasn't surprised. But maybe I was surprised with how well I did. I think that's a better way to put it. I didn't know that I had it in me. I didn't know that I could stack up against people that were that good. There were a lot of good drummers there.
It's got to be daunting. You go into a room and you see probably people you recognize from other places, and it's like, oh man.
And also, they had won the year before.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a gold medal group.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that was really crucial, because I remember talking to Roger sort of earlier on in his time at Blue Coats, right? And right around the time you're talking about, Blue Coats stopped being a place that people left to go march somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you definitely had some diehard Coats people, like a good majority of them, but you always had like some people sort of going through there on their way to somewhere else, and that stopped.
It became the destination.
It became the destination.
Yes.
For everybody. This is my end goal. Once I get there, I want to, that's where I want to end my career.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, I feel like Kyle's generation, 2016,
Yeah.
that played a huge part in it because they won. And
right.
suddenly that reaching that level seemed possible, being at a group like Bluecoats.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you're talking about when you say people kind of use that as a jumping off point to get to another group or, but you know, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by like-minded people that wanted to be at Bluecoats.
Right.
And it's exactly what happened. Like that group got saturated with people that wanted that to be the destination.
Well, I remember, around that time is when I kind of started getting back into it, like 13, 14. And I've talked about this before, just watching the lot videos. And it's like, dude, I fell in love with the whole, just everything,
And also, like, I mean, obviously, 2016 was a big year where you felt like Bluecoats, they added something to their identity that was new. That was the beginning of a new chapter for them, especially with the way they looked, right? Because before that, it was always some variation of the traditional blue uniform. Yeah. And then the next year it was basically, 2016 was basically, whatever you thought of us before, let go of that and check this out. Right. And then every year since then, it's been this new, this new thing.
And then that's where the challenge is, to one up the year prior.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But, it's I think Bluecoats had been on the cusp for so long.
Yeah.
And knowing, sometimes what it takes to break through, right, is to make people look at you differently. Like, look at Vanguard, right? Vanguard had been in a little bit of a drought, right? They decide to let go of the old visual look, right? Almost win. The first year they do it. They did win. The second year they did it. Was what they were doing all that different? Maybe not. But sometimes you need to reset people's perception.
I mean, and that goes all the way back to the 90s with you guys, like in 94.
Oh yeah.
I honestly
and that's why it resonates with me, because we had to do that at Blue Devils. In like midway through marching there, I got to wear the old uniform and sort of try to uphold the old thing for a couple of years before we basically just redefined everything, hated every minute of it, but then established something that was going to be the foundation for the future.
And I've said this before too. It's like when you guys did it in 94, I feel if you wouldn't have made that uniform change, that show just it's just another show. But for some reason, you guys changed the identity of who you were, and then it also
made us let go of the past. Yeah. Right? Like if we needed to do it instead of living in the shadow of anything. We needed to do it to move forward. When you made it, right? Even though you had a couple of years under your belt, right? Again, sort of reconciling what you thought from the outside versus what it was actually like from the inside, but then also still being a young person doing it at that level suddenly. What was it like for you?
It was jarring.
Well, let's face it, too. That 2017 show,
dude,
it's an underrated show. I want to put it up there as like one of the hardest shows ever attempted, just from the listening point,
Yeah, like the fact that it was, I believe that it's still the hardest drum corps, or sorry, maybe not drum corps as a whole, but definitely the hardest Bluecoat show that's ever existed.
Oh, I put it up there, one of the hardest drum corps shows ever.
With how much we were doing, how much was on the field, how dense the beats were, like that drum feature, dude. I mean, even right off the bat, that whole percussion feature is like 45 seconds long. It starts the show. So the fact that pressure kind of was weighing on my 17-year-old self stepping in a world-class drum corps for the first time is definitely really intimidating. I felt like I couldn't mess up. I just felt like I had to be on it 100% of the time. That's the expectation, but that's never the reality. And
that's that personal ownership though that you put into it. Yeah,
definitely. But like I said, I was really intimidated. But
did you lean on anybody? How did you make your way through it?
Who were your mentors during that time that were in the line?
It didn't really happen until maybe the end of the season. I got really close to Chris Morales. He's now one of my closest friends because of that season. But I actually just talked about this on Dan Ricoder's podcast. but I was really angry that whole season. I was really just I didn't know how to manage my emotions very well.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime I felt like I made a mistake or I didn't play well enough, I got angry. And that was something that was a big obstacle for me, not only that year, but for the years to come. But for sure that held me back a lot, and I spent a lot of my summer just being mad at myself.
Sure.
And that was kind of what fueled me to get better. It's like, man, I'm not good enough. I need to drum this.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you had this, misconception that for some reason you had to do it alone. It was just like, I need to figure this out and sort of keep everybody else out, and I can't really show it to them or engage with them until it's right, until I've fixed it for myself, kind of thing.
Yeah, I was scared to show vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the guys on the line were like you need to not be weak, but Kyle was helpful. He was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't always seek his help, not because I didn't think it was valuable, but because I wanted to fix it on my own.
Sure.
I wanted to have that satisfaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I spent a lot of that time just trying to fix my own issues independently.
No, so you got through that 2017 season, and then you go into 18, a little bit more seasoned.
Mm-hmm.
And did you feel more comfortable during that season?
Oh yeah, definitely. I spent a lot of 2017 trying to figure out my hands
Mm-hmm.
and the technique, and I was like, every single lot video, my hands look different.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I look back and I'm like, why was I drumming like that? But after my season at Broken City, I was drumming with a lot of the BK guys, and they had just come off a really successful summer, and I was, and some of the BK super veterans like Zach and Tyler were in that line, and Matt Gomez.
Right.
All those guys really helped me, and I was kind of I was picking their brain about the way that they were drumming.
This was Broken City 2018.
Yeah.
Fall.
Yeah.
Right.
So definitely was more influenced by their style and their philosophies. So by the time I got to Blue Coats in 18,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I had a more diverse background,
Yeah.
So that definitely helped me and build my confidence.
Here's a not so obvious question. Why Broken City?
That's a good question.
Especially, because you were a PAL guy initially.
Yeah. That season in 2017, in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
I was, it's funny that I look back, and when Cage happened in 2016, I was like, I didn't write Broken City off, but I was just like, I'm not really into it.
Yeah.
And then Spine happened, and I was like, dude,
I'm into it.
what? Yeah. I was just totally flipped my perspective 180.
Right.
And I saw that snare break. I was like, dude,
Mm-hmm.
I got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And especially being taught under Roger in the 2017 season kind of secured that decision for me. And I told him, I think maybe it was one of the prelim, semis, or finals days, but I pulled him aside and was like, hey, Roger, I just want to let you know that I'm planning on auditioning at Broken City. He was like, dude, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he had such a positive response was helpful too.
Yeah.
But their 17 show was really impactful for me emotionally as a performing the activity, and not even just from the sense that, I want to do that, but I felt like it had emotionally communicated with me on a personal level,
Right.
in a way that was unique to me.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of felt like that's where I should go.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're doing something that speaks to me on like you said, like a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like that show is speaking to you.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that maybe until closer to the 2018 season after the 2018 DCI season after marching with those guys. But yeah, it just felt like they weren't so caught up in what the audience thought of them,
Sure.
And a lot of that has to do with Mike's DNA, but
Now, when you talk about Mike, we're talking about Mike Jackson.
yeah, Mike Jackson. Yeah.
So you get to Broken City, and you had Roger at Blue Coats, and was Suvin there at the time?
Yeah.
And so you have Roger and Suvin, and then now you have a mixture. You add Mike Jackson, and Veronica Wicks, and some other instructors. And what was that like when you got there? I mean, was it different? Did you know what to expect, or were you like, okay?
I had no idea what to expect. I was familiar with Roger's standards
Yep.
and kind of just the way that he runs rehearsals and all that stuff. But I wasn't familiar with Mike at all.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't familiar with Veronica. Basically, yeah, like you said, Roger and Steven were the only ones that I kind of knew going into it. So all the other instructors, like John Wicks, who else was there at the time? Well, at the time, the staff was like half the size that it is now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because all the other snare techs are age outs.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Roger was running the snare line alone at the time. But it was nice to kind of. I felt like at that point I had been dipping my toes in a lot of different groups, like SCVC 2015-16, and then POW, super different, and then Bluecoats, really different, and then Broken City. It was just kind of diversifying the people that I was learning from, and it was great. I felt like there was a lot of untouched information down here,
Right.
that I had yet to absorb.
Right.
It seems like with Mike, I mean, I don't know this, but it seems like you want to. It kind of pulls you into being just a better musician overall. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Mike always talks about, a few things, individuality, and how each individual constituent of a show is equally important. Artistic expression, I guess you could say. The dynamics. Mike's books are very dynamic and kind of there's a lot of ebb and flow.
Yep.
The dynamics tell the story. He always talks about what story you're trying to tell. What is the message that you are trying to send by playing this part? Maybe you're just playing a triple roll. You don't know that, or you don't know maybe the message that went into Mike's mind when he was writing it. But he always encouraged us to, and he still does. He encourages members to kind of find their story that they want to tell
Right.
when they're playing that music.
And I think that's a really interesting message. And by the way, I will say that I know that there is stuff that Mike talks to you guys about, I'm sure, that he wants to keep in-house, right? Because it's for the membership. It's a little bit of like, the world doesn't need to know that. This is just for us. But Broken City, I would say, arguably, when they sort of burst onto the scene, became like a real shock. They sent sort of a shock, shock wave ripples throughout the activity where people were like, what's going on there? What are they doing? How are they creating that? You decided to go there because it resonated with you. Something reached you. When you went there, what you're talking about, I feel like, is a little bit of like how they achieve that, right?
Yeah.
Talking to the members and saying, you need to figure out how you're going to tell your story through this, and use sort of like this show as a vehicle for doing that, because maybe, because that's how you create reaching that one person in the audience that's going to, come out and audition the next year or 3 years from now. And it's not an obvious thing. How to do that? Because what I will say is, I feel like, and you can disagree with me or not, but I feel like Broken City and Mike in general is someone that a lot of people sort of cop something about what they do, whether it be a visual thing, whether it be something musically, but whenever you see other groups do it and you're like, that really, there's nothing wrong with being inspirational, but there's a little bit of like, I'm trying to do what they're doing. And it feels like it's being copied from the outside. It's not actually how it's being created. It's just mimicry, right? Like, I've never seen so many groups with their head down, after like, 2016 or 2017, when it was just like, oh, we can do that. That can become like a visual motif that can deliver information. But is there anything you can talk about? Because you got to see it from the inside, and you got to see sort of like the community's reaction to what you guys were doing from the outside. Is there anything where you were like, there's a huge divide in between like what people see from the outside or what they think is happening from the outside versus what's happening on the inside?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. There's this trope that we do the same thing every year. You know, after obviously through
Like there's a formula.
Yeah, through conversations with friends from other groups, and people outside of the activity. Well, yeah, maybe just people that have exited the activity, or maybe family members or anything like that. But yeah, it's funny because they're like, oh, Broken City always does the same thing every year. But you can argue that about every group because
Sure.
you know, that's certain things are part of our identity. And maybe like just one example, we always go to the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Broken City always crawl? You know, it's just the way that we tell a story, and other groups have different ways of doing that.
Right.
And yeah, I guess hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I mean, like there's, again, without sort of revealing the secrets and stuff like that of what goes on. And again, like the stuff that's just for you guys. I do think it's important because, you know, these days with especially the high profile groups, everybody has opinions, and a lot of people really feel emboldened to express those opinions online. And a lot of those opinions are built upon partial information from the outside. But it's nice to get a view of like what it's like from the inside. I remember 2018, I worked a lot with Yuka. She and I would get together and drum once every week, sometimes twice every week. We worked through that book, you know, and you know, and really trying to figure out like, there's an insight you get, right? When you know, I mean, and I'm sure you went through that process too of like trying to figure out like, not just how do I play this and how do I perform this, but how do I express what needs to be expressed by all of this? That's something you can't tell from the outside.
Yeah, you can't copy that.
Right.
It's authenticity. And, you know, even not just Broken City, if you see other groups trying to imitate other groups,
right,
then there's two different types of that to me. You know, there's obviously mimicry, but there's synthesis. And to me, that's a lot of creativity has to do with synthesis, because maybe you're taking something that you like from another group, but you're trying to find your own way to spin it. You know, there's nothing wrong with copying other groups, because maybe you see what somebody do, something that you like, and you want to do that. That's totally fine. And
it's like drawing inspiration from
exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, you don't want to copy like verbatim what someone's doing.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, man. People will be quick to call you out on that too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's weird is that it's obvious from the outside, or at least it feels obvious when you look at a group and you're like, oh, now all of a sudden they're doing that. I've seen that before. You know,
it's like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme with his like snaps.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that I will say is that, I mean, I don't know what Mike's perspective is on all that. I'm sure that he has some awareness that people are heavily inspired by what he does. What I like, though, maybe something sort of something good, if anything, that came out of the forced break that we all had with the pandemic, was that a lot of that went away, I feel like, once people emerged from the pandemic. Yeah. And maybe people realized that the actual pathway was a little bit more of what you guys are actually doing, which is being authentic to yourself, right? Like that's how you create your version of this thing that you're inspired by, versus trying to copy the moves of the group that inspired you. You know, I mean, I don't know that for sure, but that I tend to be hyper aware. I watch a lot of videos. I go to a lot of shows and stuff like that, over and over again. And I, you know, obviously talk to a lot of people in the activity. That's a little bit of the takeaway that I have, and I think that's a good one. You know, I definitely think that, you know, if you really want to contribute to this activity, be the best version of yourself. Whether you're a designer, whether you're a performer, don't get caught up in, you know, living in somebody else's shoes, trying to be them. You know, that's unfair, both to them and to you, and it probably holds you back.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, speaking on your point of filling somebody else's shoes, that is definitely more flexible in the indoor scene.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of that changing. A group will look completely different or sound completely different the next year, just because maybe they're just making different creative choices. They saw something the year before that, oh, maybe we should try a different version of that.
Yeah.
But in DCI, it's a lot more rigid.
Yeah.
You know, definitely. I mean, it's better now than it used to be. But you know, blue coats don't even look like blue coats anymore.
Right. But is that now what blue coats is? You know?
Yeah. It's
right?
it's consistently inconsistent.
Right.
And they don't fit into that common, I guess, image you have of them.
But the drum line, you always know the Blue Coats drum line.
Yeah.
Even from a distance, you hear that drum set playing, you know exactly who it is.
Yep.
Yeah, in the lot.
Was 2018 really different for you, blue coats? Did you feel more comfortable? You were a vet.
Yeah, it was definitely different for me. I felt like I played a kind of a big brother role to especially the guys that were on my side of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out Taylor McBride,
Mm-hmm.
Ethan Levin, and David Ware. Yeah, the three of those guys and I had built a really good relationship over the summer because I felt like I was on that side. I was in center 3 that year,
Mm-hmm.
and they were my side of the line.
Right.
So it was my job to communicate what Fitz was telling to those guys if they missed it, or to maybe just emulate what he was doing to the best that I could, so that I was setting a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in 2017, I was trying to keep my head afloat.
Yeah.
You know, I was borderline drowning, or at least I felt like it. And 2018 just definitely felt more comfortable.
Filling that kind of role for the guys, for the younger guys in the line, did that help you with your own
Oh yeah,
managing of emotions and
Yeah.
like and not feeling like, oh, I don't have to go at this alone?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
definitely. Yeah, the fact that Fitz and Dawson and I had marched together that year before
Mm-hmm.
felt like I had more community. And the fact that there were newer people that were kind of looking up to me as a veteran, I was like, oh, I got to check myself.
Right.
You know, maybe I don't have to be as emotionally reactive to the things that are happening to me. Maybe I have more control than I thought. So I was just trying to set a good example to those guys, and fortunately they all came back the next year, and but yeah, that and I was talking through emotional issues that maybe they were experiencing too,
Right.
that I had felt the year before as a rookie. That was really important to me. It's like, I don't want you guys to go through the same experience that I did, for as long as I did too.
Sure.
You know, I see the things that are happening. Maybe you're pissed off because you played a bad rep. Maybe you're just not feeling it today. That happens in Room Corps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people look up to DCI
It
lines.
happens at every level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like people, you know, it's like people don't get that, you know, that you know, you'll go and you'll see a line, you know, in mid-July or something like that, and you can tell that they're in the weeds.
Yeah.
They're going through it, and maybe if you didn't see that and you only watched like the final product and stuff like that, you would think, oh, they killed it all year. It was easy for them,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But people don't realize that sort of, you know, the struggle is real, and something that you have to learn how to deal with at every level.
Yeah.
Every single line goes through it.
Yeah. You can't give 100% of your ability every day. It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the NBA, you know, these guys, if you're going 100% every single day, you're going to get injured.
Yeah.
You have to give 100% of what you're able to give that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like I'm going hard in the paint every single rehearsal day. I mean, in DCI maybe, yeah, but even still, performing at
But
a
even
high
if it's
level,
not, even if it's not physical,
Yeah.
emotionally, like
Yeah.
going 100% emotionally every day, sometimes it's just not sustainable.
yeah,
You know.
it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It really takes a lot out of you. I remember in all my summers, playing under the shade and subs on stands is more exhausting than playing on the move.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm moving around, I'm going, but I'm just, when I'm on stands and we're just doing music, I'm thinking the entire time, and my brain is getting tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually was with my Upland kids yesterday, and we didn't get the gym, so yesterday was all music for 4 hours inside of a room.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell the kids they were getting sleepy on me.
Yep.
They asked me if we were going to be on the floor. You know, they wanted to get outside, and they were drumming indoors. So that's definitely magnified at the independent level. And that that just tiredness, that exhaustion.
When you go through that 18 season and you go into 19, were you the section leader for the 19 line?
Yes.
So you get put in that leadership role. How was that for you? I mean, did it seem overwhelming at first, or was it something like, you know what, I can do this?
That's a really good question. Playing wise, I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome because I had the misconception that if you're section leader, you have to be better than everybody else on the line, and that's just not true.
No, you have to have these leadership intangibles to be able to, and I use this like, not like literally, but to grab people and be like, and pull them along and get them to that destination where you're going.
I felt confident in my leadership abilities, the drumming stuff aside, in being in that leadership position, definitely kind of, I was softly introduced to that in 2018. Unfortunately, Dawson, had an injury that season, so he had to take the last few weeks of the summer off out of the line. So at that point, I was splitting center with Fitz, and not that my position had changed, but I was splitting center with the original center, so I felt like I have to be on my gig even more than I did before, because if we're going to split center, I have to be just as undeniable as he is. So I took it upon myself to try my best to match his energy every single day, and that definitely helped getting kind of but getting introduced to that in 2018 for the 2019 season. I felt like I was able to, people were able to talk to me and be vulnerable with me, and I was able to grab their attention and not force it. I felt like I didn't have to do that year, which was great. I felt like the guys from the year before already trusted me. And
did you have to light a fire under anybody to get them going?
No.
I mean, you don't need to name names or anything.
No,
but I'm
actually,
just saying,
I didn't.
Or was everybody like all in?
Everybody was all in from the get-go, because we had how many vets did we have? We had 5 vets that year, and four rookies. So the center 5, we were all vets, and the 2 guys on the outside on each side, they were all pretty young, especially Sebastian. He's still marching.
Yeah.
But they were, I think none of them were even 20 years old. So all 4 of them were very impressionable, and I felt like I just had to set a good example. I always believed in leading by example and just setting good values. That was one really important thing that we had learned the past few years, because there were some cultural things that needed to change in 2017. It felt like at times I was living my college years without getting too specific. And especially the new age of drum corps, there's a lot of member policies that should have been implemented a long time ago.
Right.
Like it just establishing more rules, more structure to the summer. You can't just have 20-year-olds doing whatever they want in their free time. So just establishing good values, and we
could George and I could tell you about different member stuff back.
I'm sure
that's for off camera.
Yeah, the 90s was the Wild West, dude. But they trusted me, and I felt like that was reciprocal. I trusted them, they trusted me, and it was just really good from the start.
I mean, you think about it, it's like, here's a Ferrari. Here, we're giving you the keys. It's your job to drive this through the summer and get it to that destination.
Yeah.
And seeing that line live and listening to that line live, you did an amazing job, because, I mean, that fantastic drum line.
Thank you.